Hi, everybody, and welcome to Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Maria F., and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater from County Dublin in Ireland, and I will be your host for today's study. Our Q&A is Sue L., and our co-host is Johan N., Audrey N., and Harlan's also co-hosting for us today. And we ask that you keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study, and also if you can keep your camera if you can turn your camera off, if you need to step away, you need to exercise, or you're driving, please disconnect your camera. We're now going to go over to Harlan G. in Scottsdale in Arizona. Good morning, Harlan.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here this morning. Couple of reminders, couple of things before we get started. The first one being that on Saturday, June the 1st, this big book study will move times, and it will move to 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. And that means it's going to be 2.5 hours earlier. And that is what we're going to do on Saturday, June the 1st. And we should probably get a volunteer. We don't need one right this second, but a volunteer to go on the Zoom channel at the time now, the time we occupy now, to sort of tell anybody that comes what has happened. But June the 1st, on Saturday, we move to 7:30 a.m. Pacific time and 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So we're going to move as of June the 1st. On May the 19th on Zoom, which is a Sunday, I am going to be doing I think it's a 1-hour symposium on sponsorship. We're going to go through all the steps, and I'm going to talk about how I sponsor those steps for anybody who is sponsoring. You can tune that in. I do not have the Zoom information now, but you can look that up on the Virtual Intergroups website that is being sponsored and put on by the Virtual Intergroup. So that's June the 1st. We're switching times. May 19th, I'm doing an hour on sponsorship. So glad you're here. And I say this all the time, but I'm going to say it once again this week. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're listening to me on the podcast, Podbeam, YouTube, anything, or you're here live, I hope it is as stunning where you are as it is here in Arizona this morning. I went and threw the garbage out this morning, and I said, man, it's got to be at least a misdemeanor to be indoors today. It's got to be at least a misdemeanor. So get outside if you're in Arizona, if you can. Okay, we're going to start more about alcoholism this morning. More about alcoholism is a key chapter. It is the last of the chapters that we are going to discuss about step number 1. And no chapter is as referred to in the big book as this chapter about alcoholism. More about alcoholism is referred to in The Family Afterward, to Wives. There are references to this chapter in the book, much more so than there are any other chapter in the book. There are 4 books, as I have said to you on many occasions, that were highly influential in the writing of the big book. They are the book of James, New Testament, the Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox, The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James, and the 4th book that is tremendously influential is this book that I'm holding in my hand. It is not conference approved, but so important was this book that Bill Wilson's personal copy is in the AA archives in New York City as we speak. And this book, of course, to which I'm referring, is The Common Sense of Drinking by Richard Peabody. Richard Peabody was an alcoholic, and in 1930, he published a book called the common sense of drinking. And there are many things in this book that are wrong. There are things in this book that tell somebody that if they relax or they take on a new hobby or they live by a schedule or if they have willpower and different things, that they don't have to drink anymore. And these things are what I would consider Narishkeit. In other words, foolishness in Yiddish. Narishkeit is foolishness in Yiddish. He was well-intentioned, but his book was inaccurate in that area. But there are some things that Peabody got so right, so correct, so fundamentally sound, that the truths of these things have been brought into our big book in chapter 3. Now, unfortunately, 1 year after Alcoholics Anonymous was founded in 1936, Richard Peabody died of his own alcoholism. What a shame that a man who was so influential in the big book in 1936 died of his own alcoholism. But what are the things that Richard Peabody bequeathed to us? And I'm going to tell you what those things are. And as we go through the chapter, I don't know how far we'll get today, I'm going to point out vigorously how those things are illustrated in the words of the big book that you are reading. These are the things that Richard Peabody got correct. You may want to write them down. They are: this disease is permanent. Whether you are in recovery or not, this disease does not ever go away. You could be in beautiful recovery, as I am. You could be in beautiful abstinence, as I am, but I still have this disease. The disease does not go away. The disease is permanent. Now, here's the second of the three things that Richard Peabody said to us that are true. The disease is progressive. What does that mean, progressive? It means that the disease gets worse over time, never better. And now I want to make a very important distinction. The disease is progressive whether you are abstinent or not. Now, the science behind how it's progressive is unknown to me, but here is what I will explain to you in layman's terms. We as human beings are getting older and older every minute of every day. And as we pass from the maximum amount of metabolism that we reach in our late teens, early 20s, we come to a point in our life where, because our metabolism has slowed down and continues to slow, and certain enzymes, certain hormones in the body are in less and less abundance, the ability that we have to burn food, to burn alcohol, to burn drugs becomes worse and worse. As the body starts to decline, as we age, and I'm not the only one that feels this. I'm going to be 70 years old here in just a few weeks. I'm going to be 70 years old. I can't burn food, nor can I move my body in the same vigor, in the same speed, with the same efficiency that I could, say, 50 years ago. So I'm actually in the best shape of my life. I'm just talking in broad generalities. I'm absolutely in the best shape of my life. No doubt, no question about it. But as we age and our metabolism continues to slow, the ravages of this disease become worse and worse and worse. That is why, specifically, when I go get my food plans, they give me less and less food, not more and more food. As I age, the amount of food that I am able to consume safely diminishes over time. That is one of the biggest differences between OA and either AA, NA, GA, SLAA, whatever that may be. we get less food. They get the same amount of alcohol, which is none, the same amount of narcotics, which is none, but we get less and less food as time goes on. And the ravages of the disease become more devastating because my bones are more brittle, my muscles are not able to heal as quickly as they did. So the disease is permanent, the disease is progressive, and the disease, if untreated, is always fatal. That's permanent, progressive, and fatal. I'm going to say it one more time. The disease is permanent, progressive, and if untreated, fatal. So we have a choice. We can die from this disease, as my mother did, or we can die with this disease, as I plan to do. We can die from the disease, meaning the diabetes. My mother was an amputee from diabetes. My mother was on dialysis because her kidneys failed because of her obesity. I watched the ravages of this disease take her out of my life. And mentally, she was out of my life during early childhood. She was never really there in terms of mentally able to cope with the world. That just wasn't one of the choices for her. And so that has affected me greatly, that she was very absent from my life. Even though she loved me very much, she wasn't able to function. But one of the things that's very, very devastating is the ravages of this disease are unlike no other. It will rip you asunder. It will do things to you you wouldn't do to your worst enemy. It is a horrible, horrible way to die. And I watched my mother die from this disease. My dad died of cancer, but my mother died of the ravages of compulsive overeating. They were both compulsive overeaters, but my mother died directly as the result of this disease. The disease is permanent, the disease is progressive, and the disease is fatal. My friend in Oklahoma, he lives near Tulsa, Oklahoma. He says it's the 3 Ps: permanent, progressive, and fatal. Permanent, progressive, and fatal. That's what he likes to say. It's always funny to hear him say that. Okay, permanent, progressive, fatal. Let's go to page 30. More about alcoholism. And the original working title of this chapter was More Truth About Alcoholism, but they didn't like that. And this was the second of the chapters that was written for the book. The 2 chapters that were written first were There is a Solution and More Truth About Alcoholism, but that title never got into print because they made him scale that back. They said, no, that makes us sound like experts on alcoholism, and we are not. So he made it More About Alcoholism. But again, before we begin the chapter, we're going to remind you that this is the last of the chapters that is concerning itself with Passo Prima, step 1. And we're going to do that. And when we get to parts of the chapter that illustrate permanent, progressive, and fatal, I'm going to point them out to you vigorously. Let's begin on page 30, More About Alcoholism, chapter 3. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. Now let's stop right there. It is very difficult for us not to want to fit into the world around us. I was having a discussion with someone yesterday evening, and we were talking about how could our denial be so strong when the evidence that there was something amiss was there in spades. Well, that is our disease. That is our ego. We want to be like other people. What is the next sentence in the book? No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. And this answers the question of this discussion that I had last night. And that is, we were talking about bulimia or compulsive. Now, in my case, I couldn't deny it, but we do not want to think We are bodily and mentally different from our fellows. We want to be the same as them. Okay. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. And I have memories of my life where I would eat like other people in front of you. My mother was a sneak eater. I was wanton. I was brazen. I mean, I didn't care. I just wanted to die. But my mother was a sneak eater, and she could eat in front of you, and you would think that she must be breathing fat air or something, because there was no way to really explain that she was probably 275 pounds, because when she was in front of you, she ate like a hummingbird. Well, when you were not there, she would pull food out of the wall. I mean, she seemed to pull it out of the floor, out of the wall, out of the window. I mean, out of thin air. She just had that knack of waiting you out. Okay, the idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinking. When I control my eating, let's say there's somebody there that I'm scared of, and that happens. Some people I'm more scared of than others, and they get on me about my weight, they get on me about my food. And to tell you the truth, I just don't want to hear the BS. I don't want to hear these people getting on my case about how fat I'm getting or am, or how much food I'm eating. So in front of that person, I could control myself very, very well, because I knew once I got away from you, or once you left, I was going to eat most of Illinois and parts of Wisconsin, because all I had to do was wait you out. And I didn't want to have to wait you out, but I knew sometimes I had to do that, because I didn't lead an above board life. I would act in front of you like I was on a diet. And then when I got away from you, I must have learned that from my mother. I probably did, that I would eat the house. Okay. And some people, I just ate right in front of them, and, whatever it was. But the great obsession of every normal drinker is that we will be able to control and enjoy. Now, when I'm enjoying my food, I'm eating wantonly, brazenly. I cannot control my food, because now I've triggered the physical allergy, and any type of control, any type of moderation is out the window. Is the great obsession. What is an obsession? An obsession is a thought that pushes aside all thought to the contrary, not some thought to the contrary, all thought to the contrary. So let's take that sentence again and let's go through it, because this is an important sentence in the understanding of step one. And when I sponsor step one, I'll give you a little preview of May 19th. I'll give you a little preview. When I sponsor step one, they have to explain to me what this sentence means. And I need to hear them explain it correctly, or we go back through it and they have to do it again. The understanding of this sentence is one of the keystones to the idea of step one. How do you work step one? You don't. It is a conclusion of the mind based on your knowledge of yourself and your history. There is no working of step one. There is no working of two or three. They are conclusions of the mind. And then you build on them as you sponsor, as you go through your life in recovery. You build on that. Let's take a look at this sentence again one more time. We don't normally do that, but we're going to do it in this chapter. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking. If I'm controlling it, I cannot enjoy it. If I'm enjoying it, I cannot control it. I hope that's been made clear. Controlling it means I'm just letting everything go on a slow simmer. I hate your guts. I wish you were dead, but I know that I don't want to fight with you while you're looking at me eating. So I'm going to eat like you want me to eat. I'm going to eat the way I think is going to meet your approval. But if I enjoy my eating because of the physical allergy, I cannot control it. So I cannot both control and enjoy my eating at any time ever. It's impossible for me to do both. If I'm controlling, I can't enjoy. If I'm enjoying, I can't control. It is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker, a thought which pushes aside all thought to the contrary. The persistence of this illusion. What is an illusion? An illusion is something that appears real, but it is not. So the persistence of this thing that's not real, like a mirage or a dream or a fantasy, something that's not real, the persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. And how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people are going to die today chasing this illusion? The illusion of what? What illusion? They are going to persist in thinking that they can control and enjoy their eating. If I'm controlling, I cannot enjoy. If I'm enjoying, I cannot control. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Stop right there. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. In other words, I know based on my history that I cannot ingest certain foods. I cannot ingest them safely. That every time I ingest certain foods that create a party in my mouth, I'm eating these foods, I covet these foods. I will steer the group of friends that I have to a restaurant that has these foods specifically, so I can binge on them, and I will do everything I can to get them to go there, or I will go there myself, but I am going to score these foods. And I use that word deliberately because these foods to me are like a narcotic. They produce an effect within my brain that instantly changes my perception of reality. I cannot simultaneously control and enjoy my food at the same time. The key word there is simultaneously. Okay, so I know that that's not possible. I know that that's not possible. But there are certain foods that will, in my brain, change my perception of reality. And these foods are called my allergic foods. My allergic foods do not necessarily have to match up with yours. I don't want to go into what my allergic foods are. You hear me talk about them from time to time, but the reason I don't want to talk about them is I don't want to get you thinking that if your foods and mine don't match up, that somehow you're not a compulsive overeater or you're doing it wrong or something. I don't want those thoughts in your mind. The idea that you are or are not a compulsive overeater should have no influence from me. No influence from me. This is a self-diagnosing disease, and I don't want to go through my list of allergic foods. I know them well. I know them well. But the first step in recovery is to concede to my innermost self that I cannot simultaneously, simultaneously means at the same time, concurrently. I cannot control and enjoy my food. If I'm controlling it, I can't enjoy it. If I'm enjoying it, I can't control it. That there are certain foods that create within me an allergic reaction. What is that allergic reaction that Dr. Silkworth teaches us? We don't need Peabody to teach us this. We have Silkworth. And if you're asking, did Peabody know about Silkworth? No, he did not. Did Silkworth know about Peabody? I don't know. But here's what we do know. There are certain foods that create an actual physical craving for more of the same when I eat them. The allergy in me to ragweed pollen produces sneezing, itchy, watery eyes, and I frequently lose my voice. I don't know how the voice got in there, but when I was a little boy, little kid, I went to an ear, nose, and throat guy on Peterson Avenue in Chicago, and my mother was complaining that I can't talk. I lose my voice from time to time when my allergies are bothering me. And he said to my mother, that's very normal. He's just irritated. His sinuses and his eustachian tubes are irritated, and it causes that dryness in the throat. And he said that's very common. And I have suffered from that from the time I was a little pre-kindergarten. My mother would say to me, Harlan Charles Grabowski, it is time to turn off the voice box. That's what she would say to me. She'd say, it is time for you to turn off the voice box. And I knew then that I had to be quiet because my voice wasn't going to come back any quicker if I kept talking. Anyway, okay, so the first step in recovery is not a written assignment. The first step in recovery is not to read outside books. The first step in recovery is not to do many things. This is the first step in recovery, to concede to your innermost selves that you are a compulsive overeater. And I come to that conclusion by reviewing in my mind my own personal history, my own personal life, and coming to the conclusion that based on my unaided willpower, I am unable to battle this disease and win. Can't do it. I need a power greater than myself, which is step 2. But let's stay with step 1 for now. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. What is a delusion? Now, we've used the word illusion, and delusion is the same kind of concept. If someone is psychotic delusional, that means that they don't see the same reality that we see. Delusion means something that we see that is not real. It is different from reality. So if we read these words, the delusion, in other words, the fantasy, the illusion, the unrealistic picture that we have, that we are like other people or presently maybe, has to be smashed. Now, many of us have lost weight. I've lost a lot of weight. I was a Tops king in Chicago and a Weight Watchers king in Chicago. I've dieted down at times in my life. And I thought, well, now I'm okay. Now, here's something that's tricky. I have a whole world of people that will tell me if I lose enough weight, now you're okay. Now you're great. How do you feel? Now, if I was honest with these people, I would say to these people, I feel horrible. But they would pat me on the back and I would lie right to their face and say, I feel great. Because when I don't have a program and I'm not enlarging my spiritual life, I don't have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. When I'm not eating, I lose weight, just like anybody else. Calories in, calories out, calories in, calories out. No different than anybody else. Here's the kicker. Here's the difference. When a normal person feels better physically, they tend to feel better emotionally too. But because food is not my problem, it's my solution. When I'm not eating, and I'm dieting, I do feel better. I feel anger better. I feel jealousy better. I feel fear better. I feel lots of things better because I'm not sating those feelings with food. And so I feel everything more acutely. Remember that we talked at length about this in the doctor's opinion, that food for someone like me is never the problem. Food is the solution to the problem. If food is the solution to the problem, what is the problem? The problem is the discomfort that I have with the reality of the world around me. People are not sticking to my script. I'm not able to control other people. I'm not able to control the responses and actions of the people around me. I'm not able to control the world. I'm fearful. I'm jealous. I'm angry. I'm selfish. I lie. I feel guilt. I feel shame. I feel remorse. And when those feelings start to build up within me, because my brain gets such an effect from food, my brain will instantly laser in on the sense of ease and comfort that comes instantly by eating certain foods. And I will eat those foods in search of relief to the buildup of those emotions, my inability to hang in there with feelings that other people feel so easily. Anger, guilt, shame, remorse, happiness, success, all those things are very difficult for me. And other people, they get angry, they go outside, they kick a tire, they're good. They take a bath, they're good. They take a shower, they're good. They go to the gym, they're good. They read a book, they're good. They listen to music, they're good. I stew in it and stew in it and stew in it. And I eat food in search of relief from that pain. And in the food lies the death. So food was never my problem. Food was the solution to the problem. And if I keep treating the food with dieting, I will never have freedom from this disease. I will never be able to simultaneously enjoy and control my eating. When I treat the mind, remember the chapter 2, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. How do I treat the mind? With a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. The miracle of this program is not that I went to dinner last night and didn't eat bread. The miracle of this program is not that I went to dinner last night and didn't eat pasta. The miracle of this program is I didn't want to. That's the miracle of this program. Because I didn't want to and I abstained happily is something I cannot put into words. How free that, how emancipating that is. The release from the desire to eat these foods. Because when I'm dieting, I'm just hanging in there on willpower. I can't do that for long. You guys all know I can't do that forever. I can't do that forever. So to have a situation where I am absolutely emancipated from that desire is the miracle of this program incarnate. That's the miracle right there. I cannot simultaneously control and enjoy my eating. I must be a compulsive overeater. And if I am one, I'm going to have to work this program harder and harder and harder and harder every day for the rest of my life. Let's continue. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. Control and enjoy cannot be simultaneous. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. There is never going to be a day when I am going to, on my own, be able to sit down and watch people eating pizza or Doritos or French fries or what have you, and not be, I cannot enjoy it. I can't eat that with them and just shut it off. It's not going to happen. I do not have control today. I will not have control tomorrow. So if anybody out there is relatively new and you're thinking that if you keep working this program and you lose your weight, that at that time everything will be just groovy, you're in for a surprise. You're in for a surprise. And the surprise is you never arrive at that point. You have to keep working this program more and more and more and more. Why is that? It's because of what we talked about at the top of the hour, because the disease is permanent, progressive, and if untreated, it is fatal. Permanent, progressive, and fatal, as my friend in Oklahoma likes to say. He's a card. He's an absolute card, and he likes to say permanent, progressive, and fatal. Okay. All of us felt at times we were regaining control. We had pink cloud moments. Did we not? Did we not have pink cloud moments where we thought, hey, I've got this? And you know what you hear over and over again if you listen? You hear it every day on Vision. You hear it almost every day in Scottsdale. People will say, I thought I had this under control. They had lost their weight. They had stopped purging. They had stopped the laxative. They had stopped the vomiting. They had stopped the exercise bulimia. They had stopped starving. And they thought to themselves, because the evidence was there, that they had this thing licked. And we don't. It never goes away. Permanent, progressive, and fatal if untreated. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control because the disease gets worse, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I have put myself through hell in a handbasket. When I was a little boy, there was a game show. I want to say Truth or Consequences, but I don't think that was it. There was a game show that challenged somebody. This is pretty crazy to challenge him to do that because they could have died. Challenged him to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. And if they went over Niagara Falls in a barrel, they would win X amount of money. Well, the guy did it. He went over Niagara Falls in a barrel, and it just showed how the water just took control of everything. This disease took control of everything about my life. It killed my dreams. It killed my aspiration. It beat me unmercifully, and when it was done beating me, it set me on fire. I have been degraded. I have been an object of ridicule. I walked out of the house and people laughed at me. I couldn't fit in a car. I couldn't get in or out of a car. I couldn't go to the movies because I couldn't fit in the seat. I also didn't go to the movies because I had no one to go with. I went on my first date with a girl when I was 35 years old. I had the same feelings, the same needs, the same wants, the same aspirations as any of you. I'm just as human as you. But I had to put my feelings and put my instincts in my pocket because I couldn't act on them. Could you imagine the horror of a girl if she found out I liked her when I was 300, 400, 500 pounds? Could you just imagine? I had to keep everything inside. I ended up in a career that I didn't even love. I didn't even like, I meant to say. I sold on a telephone because that was all I could really do. I could have been so much more. I could have done so much better with my life. I'm still working at 70 because I don't have a pension. I'm still working at 70 because this disease robbed me of so much time and so much grace and so much dignity. I have been in restaurants where people I did not know took food off my plate, food off my table, and gave it to the busboy and said, "This guy's fat as a house. He doesn't need this." I have been in public places where people have grabbed my ass and grabbed my man boobs and patted, slapped my stomach, wanting to know when the baby hippopotamus was due. I have been humiliated in every way you can be humiliated. I have been made fun of, laughed at, discarded by society. This is not a society that accepts the morbidly obese. And the morbidly obese American is someone who is ostracizable, someone who you can make fun of, someone who you can exclude, and it is all for their own good, and you can write it off. I have had fat shaming within OA. I have had people in OA, in the rooms, in the meetings, in the rooms, shame me and degrade me in the most merciless way you can imagine. Is that why God put me on this earth, to be somebody's shmata? A shmata is a dish rag in Jewish, it's a rag. If you hear somebody say, "I'm in the shmata trade," that means they sell clothing. But a shmata is a dish rag, not anything to be taken seriously. You think that's why God put me on this earth? Do you think that's why my parents raised me, so I could be an object of ridicule? But apparently that was the case for far longer than I care to talk about. I was a non-entity. Some of you were too. I know what it's like to break furniture. I know what it's like to not be able to wear the clothes other people wear. I know what it's like not to be able to enjoy a summer afternoon in the sun. I know what it's like to be excluded. But now I have a place I can go where I am not ridiculed. And I have a way of life that works in rough going. And I have a fellowship of people that accept and love me, and I love them. I also have friends who are not in this program, who love me to the core of their soul, and I love them. I have miracles from God, and the only way I got those miracles, some by chance, but all the rest by working my tail off in this program. I have a place where I belong. There's a place where I can go and be one of many. And I hope that if you're out there, unable to go in a car, unable to get in or out of a car, if you're unable to have clothing that fits, if you're going to a wedding or a bar mitzvah or God knows a party, and you're afraid because you don't want people to see you, I've been there. I've been there. There's a way out. Are you ashamed of yourself, and do you loathe yourself? I used to loathe myself. I used to hate myself. I would see a picture of myself and my skin would crawl. You were meant for better. You are a precious child of God. We're going to work this program together, and God is going to rise you above that. You were not put on this earth to be somebody's shmata. You were put on this earth to be a special human being in God's garden. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, your painful past is of maximum usefulness to God and the people about you. Use your pain to help other people, And it will be the greatest miracle of your life to see them recover. Let's continue. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. We talked about that. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. We get worse, never better. You were not put on this earth to hide and isolate. You were put on this earth to be with people. I'll tell you something that's kind of sad. As I read the Chicago Tribune every day. I love the Chicago Tribune. My mother hated it because of its political views years ago. She hated it. But it's changed since, and she's gone. I read in the paper that the most prevalent number of people in a household in America today is one. More people are living alone by themselves than ever before. And that packaging for food and packaging for pharmaceuticals and packaging for different things that we use every day are being scaled back to single servings and single sizes because more and more Americans are living alone. If you live alone and you're happy about it, God bless you. I detest it. I live alone and I hate it. I despise it. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. But one of the things this disease does is it does what any abuser does. What does an abuser do? It isolates you from your support system. Anytime someone abuses another person, the first thing they do is pull them out of their friends, pull them out of their family, and isolates them. And this disease does that quite efficiently. Let's continue. We are like men who have lost their legs. My mother was an amputee from diabetes at the end of her life, the very end of her life. It was more shocking to me than her death. It was just to see the leg was just horrible. I get nightmares just thinking about it. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. Let's read that sentence again because it's important, because you're going to forget it. You are not going to make it 15 minutes after this meeting because your mental blank spot will cause you to forget this. We're going to read it again, but the only way you're going to remember this is to teach this to other people. The sentence is, neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there had been brief recovery, followed always, not most of the time or sometimes, always by a still worse relapse. Why is that? Because it's a progressive disease. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree that there's no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. When I was 9 years old, I went to the doctor, Dr. Jacobson, and he started screaming at my mother, and my mother started screaming at him, all in Yiddish, no English at all. I was the only one in the room that wanted them to speak English, apparently. And I came home with a prescription of diet pills, and it said on the bottom of the bottle where they print out your thing, Harlan Grabowski and blah, 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 Rosen's Drugstore on demand. It said to curb appetite. And when I was a little boy, there was AIDS, AIDS candies that were supposed to curb your appetite. There was Metrical, there was Slim Fast, there was all manner of potions and pills and little fudgies that were designed to curb your appetite. This was the catchword of the 60s, curb your appetite. You don't hear that much anymore. Now they say it's a weight loss thing, but they don't talk about curb your appetite. How many of those things cured me? None of them. None of them. I took the diet pills. I lost weight, but they didn't have a pill for my brain. They didn't have a pill because the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind means I have to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, so my mind is unfettered by the guilt, shame, remorse, fear, and anger, and happiness, or whatever emotion that's going to drive me into the food. So separating me from that food, I was on diet pills when I was 9, 10, 14, and 15. Okay? But separating me from that food, and believe me, when you're on those amphetamines, you don't want to eat, but you also don't want to live. Your brain is racing. You sleep about 15 minutes a month. You're susceptible to every cold and flu and strep throat because you don't sleep. And your brain doesn't work. When you don't sleep, your brain is greatly impacted. But I didn't eat. So wouldn't we think that if I'm not compulsively overeating, that I'm cured? Let me assure you, let me be the first, not the first to tell you, no, I was not cured. Despite all we can say, page 31, despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule. That's the ego. Therefore, non-alcoholic. When I sponsor this chapter, you need to explain to me what that sentence means. So when I sponsor this chapter, that is going to come up on the test. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking, there's no test. I'm just telling you how I sponsor. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we tried. Drinking beer only. Eating organic food only, limiting the number of drinks, going on a diet, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum. Are any of these things going to help you? No. But we try them, don't we? I don't have to wait too long before somebody's going to call me up and say they've gone keto, they've gone vegan, they've gone vegetarian, they've gone kosher, they've gone whatever, carnivore. You never hear people talk about going carnivore, do you? I've never heard that. I never heard anybody call up or go on a meeting and say, I'm going to eat meat now, and that's the you never hear people do that. That's the one thing they don't do is carnivore. They never choose that. Okay, all these things are great, but I guarantee you something. If I'm a vegan, if I'm kosher, if I'm keto, if I'm Stillman, what was the one where you ate steak and you didn't eat anything but like meat and stuff like that? I think it was Stillman. No, not Stillman. Something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You'll tell me in the Q&A. But none of these things will work to cure us. They may be great things. They're great things. you know, but they are not going to cure me. They're not going to, oh, the grapefruit diet. That's another one, the grapefruit diet. Then there's the drinking man's diet. There was a thing where you eat steak and you drink whiskey. Yes, I remember the drinking man's diet. Yes, none of that's going to cure us. You may lose weight doing it, but as soon as you stop doing it, your weight is not going to just come back to where it was. It's going to go way beyond that because it is a progressive disease. It is a disease. Now, we're going to start next week. Now, June the 1st, I want to say this again. June the 1st, we are changing time. And the time is going to be 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to get started on June the 1st. But next week is not June the 1st. Next week is the 11th of May. So we're going to be at the same time we were at today. And that's what we're going to do until June. Now, I am not, I don't have the details. I'm not aware of the Zoom details or any of this, but I am doing a sponsorship workshop on May 19th for the virtual intergroup. And in just a minute, I will turn this over to somebody who's going to know a heck of a lot more than I do. Oh, somebody just texted me the Neanderthal diet. Yes, all the meat all the time. The Neanderthal. I couldn't think of the word to save my blippin' life. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, now, I don't have the details on this, but someone else I'm going to bring out here is going to have those details. Now, that's going to be May 19th. What I would like to do is let's go to Q&A, but here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you asked a question last week, that's fine. That's okay. We're not going to eliminate you. But what we're going to ask you to do is kind of hang back for a little bit of a lull in the action, kind of a lull in the action. And then you can ask your question. And please, before I turn this over to Diane, who is the chair of the virtual intergroup, who's sponsoring this sponsorship workshop, I'm going to ask again, please, no math questions and no food questions, okay? No math and no food. Let's do a very good Q&A because this really helps people. I think sometimes from the feedback that I get, and I get a lot of feedback from you guys, the Q&A is as helpful sometimes to people as the actual body of what I present. Many of you comment that you learn in the Q&A a lot. All right, Diane, why don't you give them the information on the workshop, and then we'll turn it back over to Maria or Sue or whomever. Go ahead. She's got to be unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Asked to unmute. All right.
Thank you
All
for
right, go.
acknowledging my poor stab at sign language. Hey, folks, Diane T., grateful recovering compulsive overeater. The virtual region, not intergroup.
All right.
In a virtual intergroup is one of 23 intergroups in the virtual region. The virtual region, Scottsdale Big Book Study and Westchester United Intergroup are combining forces to host this sponsorship training webinar on Sunday, May 19th, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The first hour will be yours truly talking about how to quickly and efficiently take sponsees through the steps. The second hour will be Q&A. I will put the PDF and the picture, the PNG, both of those in the chat. And my email address is on there if anybody wants to contact me and has any questions. I'll also put my phone number in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And there is a flyer on this. If somebody would put it in the chat, that would be groovy. Very, very groovy. Okay. Who's doing the Q&A? Maria, where are you? You're gone. You're not on my screen anymore. Where
I'm
did you
here,
go?
Harlan. I'm
Maria,
here.
oh, okay, all
Hiya,
right,
it's Sue L. Sue L. Over to Sue L. for Q&A, Harlan.
okay. Oh, Sue
Okay.
L, okay. And Maria,
yep.
oh, I'm sorry, Sue, take us through Q&A. Okay, fine,
You betcha.
all right.
Okay, we have the next 30 minutes that we're going to devote to Q&A. And we would ask that if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and keep your hand raised until your question is has been answered, and then we can see you. Also, please, we ask that you not make comments during the Q&A time or announcements. Put it in the chat and so that we can see it. If you want to ask an anonymous question, you can write me directly in the chat and I will ask that for you. So this wonderful, wonderful message had such depth and weight. So let's hear some questions. And we need to turn off the recording. I think it's still on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So who would like to ask our first question?